Gray, please don't go! You can't just leave like this!
You know, they say rain washes everything clean. But standing outside the glass monolith of the Vance Dynamics Tower that Tuesday morning, the only thing the freezing Chicago rain was washing away was the last shred of my dignity. I was standing there in a suit I'd borrowed from a neighbor, a charcoal gray number that was tight in the shoulders and smelled faintly of mothballs and desperate ambition watching. The water ruined the cheap leather of my shoes. I had just walked out of the most humiliating 30 minutes of my life. A job interview where I was made to feel like dirt on the bottom of a shoe, not because I wasn't qualified, but because I didn't have a piece of paper on my wall or a pedigree that matched the zip code. My name is Lucas Miller, and for the last 3 years, I've been a ghost. I'm the guy you walk past in the lobby without seeing. The guy who empties your trash bin after you've gone home to your warm families. The guy who buffs the scuff marks off the marble floors at 2 a.m. so the executives can see their reflections when they walk in at 9 o'clock. I'm the night janitor. But before life decided to throw me a curveball that hit me square in the chest, I was a concierge at one of the top hotels in the city. I handled crises for people who made more in a minute than I made in a month, and I was good at it. But grief is a thief, isn't it? It steals your time, your energy, and eventually your career. When my wife Sarah passed away, she left me with a hole in my heart, the size of the Grand Canyon, and a 4-year-old son, Toby, whose lungs were fighting a war against him from the day he was born. Severe asthma, the kind where a common cold can turn into a midnight ambulance ride. The hotel job required 60-hour weeks and 24/7 availability, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't be the dad Toby needed and the employee they demanded. So I took the night shift at Vance Dynamics. It was a step down hell. It was a fall off a cliff, but it let me be there during the day for doctor's appointments, for school runs, for the nebulizer treatments that kept my son breathing. The breaking point didn't come from the exhaustion, though. I was used to the 4 hours of sleep. I was used to the back spasms from hauling industrial mop buckets. The breaking point came in the form of a bill. A single sheet of paper from St. Jude's emergency room. $3,200. Toby had a bad attack 2 weeks ago. Lips turning blue, that terrifying wheeze that sounds like a whistle trapped in a chest. We saved him, but the cost was drowning us. I had $42 in my checking account. I was rationing food, skipping meals so Toby could have fresh fruit, but I couldn't ration money I didn't have. That's when I saw the posting on the digital board in the break room. Executive Client Liaison. Salary, $55,000 plus full family medical benefits. $55,000. That wasn't just money. That was a lifeline. That was Toby's inhalers paid for. That was sleeping at night without calculating the cost of milk. I stared at that screen for 10 minutes, the mop water going cold in the bucket next to me. I knew the building. I knew the people. I knew how to handle difficult personalities because I'd been doing it invisibly for 3 years. I applied. I didn't lie on the resume. I put down my 8 years of hospitality management. I also put down my current role, facilities maintenance lead, which is a fancy way of saying I clean up messes. When I got the email for the interview, I thought maybe, just maybe, the universe was finally cutting me a break. I didn't have a suit, sold my last one for rent 6 months ago, so I went to my neighbor, old Mr. Henderson. He lent me his son's wedding suit. It didn't fit perfect, but if I stood straight, I looked like a man who belonged in an office, not a utility closet. I looked at myself in the mirror that morning, adjusted the tie, and whispered, "Do it for Toby." The interview was with Marcus Thorne, the VP of Operations. A man I'd seen 100 times. I knew he took his coffee black with 2 sugars because I cleaned his mug every night. I knew he cheated on his diet because I found the candy wrappers in his bin. But he didn't know me. To him, I was part of the furniture. When I walked into that conference room on the 40th floor, the view was breathtaking, but the atmosphere was suffocating. Thorne sat there with two other hiring managers. A young woman named Chloe who looked nervous, and a guy named Brad who was scrolling on his phone. Thorne looked at my resume, then looked at me, then looked back at the resume with a smirk that made my stomach turn. "Mr. Miller," he said, tapping the paper with a manicured fingernail. "I'm a bit confused. It says here you're currently employed by us?" "That's correct, sir," I said, keeping my voice steady, locking my hands together to stop them from shaking. "I work on the overnight facilities team. But prior to that, I spent 8 years managing VIP guest services at the Ritz-Carlton." Thorne laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was a dry, sharp sound like a twig snapping. "Facilities. So you're a janitor." "I am currently working in custodial services, yes. But my skill set, Mr. Miller," he interrupted, leaning back, lacing his fingers behind his head. "Let's be real for a second. This role requires a certain polish. We deal with Fortune 500 CEOs, foreign dignitaries. These people expect a level of sophistication that, frankly, doesn't come from someone who spends their nights scrubbing grout." I felt the heat rising in my neck. "With all due respect, Mr. Thorne, managing a crisis for a Saudi prince at 3 a.m. because his suite isn't to his liking requires the same diplomacy as managing your boardroom schedule. I have the experience. I know this building better than anyone. I know the tenants. I know the flow." "You know the trash flow," Brad muttered without looking up from his phone. Thorne chuckled again. "Look, Lucas, can I call you Lucas? We need a pedigree here. A degree. A look. You're wearing a suit that's 2 sizes too big, and let's be honest, we hire for the future of the company. Hiring from the basement doesn't exactly send the message of prestige Vance Dynamics aims for." "I can do this job," I said, my voice getting tighter. I thought of Toby's inhaler sitting on the nightstand, almost empty. "I saved this company money last month by identifying the leak in the Vacavake system before it flooded the server room. I pay attention. I work hard. I just need a chance." Thorne stood up, signaling the end. "We're looking for a Harvard mindset, Lucas, not a hard work mindset. You're dismissed. And hey, make sure the conference room on 12 is prepped tonight, yeah? Someone spilled coffee in there." The humiliation was absolute. It wasn't just a no. It was a reminder of my place. I walked out of there, past the glass walls, past the people typing on their computers who didn't even glance up, and into the elevator. I held it together until the doors closed, and then I let my head hit the cool metal wall. I had failed. I had looked my son in the eye that morning and promised him things were going to get better, and I had failed. I walked out of the building and into the storm. The rain hit me instantly, soaking through Mr. Henderson's suit, matting my hair to my forehead. I started walking toward the bus stop, clutching my portfolio to my chest like a shield. I was calculating how many overtime shifts I'd need to pay the bill. Maybe if I stopped eating entirely for a week. "Lucas. Lucas Miller." The voice came from behind me, female, authoritative. I didn't stop. I figured it was security telling me I'd forgotten to turn in a badge or something. I kept walking, head down, letting the rain hide the fact that my eyes were burning. "Henry!" "Stop!" I froze. I turned around. Running toward me, no umbrella, no coat, just a silk blouse getting absolutely destroyed by the freezing rain, was Elena Vance, the CEO, the billionaire owner of the building. She was sprinting across the plaza in heels, dodging puddles, looking frantic. I stood there, stunned. "Ms. Vance?" She reached me, breathless, her hair plastered to her face. She grabbed my arm, not caring that I was soaking wet. "I saw you," she gasped. "I was watching the interview feed from my office. I saw what Marcus did." I pulled my arm back slightly. "It's fine, Ms. Vance. I get it. I'm just the janitor. I don't fit the image." "Shut up about the image," she snapped, and the fire in her eyes was terrifying. "Do you think I care about a suit? Do you remember 3 months ago? The woman in the lobby? The one who collapsed near the elevators at 3 a.m. I blinked, wiping water from my eyes. "Yeah, Mrs. Catherine. She was having a diabetic episode. Her sugar crashed." "That was my business partner," Elena said, shivering now. "She told me a man in a gray uniform found her when security was on break. She said he knew exactly what to do, gave her glucose gel, kept her conscious, called the paramedics, and stayed with her holding her hand until they loaded her up. She said he saved her life." "I just did what anyone would do," I mumbled. "No," Elena shook her head. 3 other people walked past her thinking she was drunk. "You stopped. I've been trying to find out who that was for months, but the shift logs were messy. Then I see you on the monitor today, talking about crisis management, and I recognized the description." She looked at me, really looked at me. "Marcus rejected you? He said I didn't have the pedigree." Elena let out a laugh that sounded more like a growl. "Come with me. Miss Vance, I'm soaking wet. I'm fired, probably, for applying out of turn." "You're not fired," she said, turning back toward the golden revolving doors. "And you're not leaving. You want a chance to prove you're more than a mop bucket? Fine, but I'm not just handing you the job, Lucas. I don't do handouts. I'm giving you a trial. A gauntlet. You come upstairs, you dry off, and you enter the executive training program starting right now. You survive 2 weeks against the MBAs and the pedigrees Marcus loves so much, and the job is yours. You fail, and you go back to the basement. Deal?" I looked at the tower. I looked at this woman who was shivering in the cold, just to offer me a shot. I thought of Toby. "Deal," I said. Walking back into that lobby with the CEO of the company while dripping wet was a surreal experience. The security guards who usually looked through me like I was made of glass suddenly snapped to attention. Elena didn't stop to explain anything to anyone. She marched me straight to the executive elevator, the one I was only allowed to use if I was carrying a bucket, and swiped her keycard. The ride up to the 40th floor was silent. Just the hum of machinery and the dripping of water from my cheap suit onto her expensive carpet. When the doors opened, the entire HR team was standing there, looking like deer in headlights. Marcus Thorne was in the middle of laughing at something, holding a coffee cup, but the laugh died in his throat when he saw Elena looking like a drowned rat, with me standing right beside her. "Miss Vance?" Marcus stammered, stepping forward. "My God, what happened? Did you fall? And why is the janitor here?" Elena didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. She had that quiet, terrifying power that sucks the air out of a room. "Marcus," she said, her voice dripping with ice water. "This is Lucas Miller. He is the newest candidate for the senior client liaison position. Put him in the rotation immediately." Marcus blinked, his face turning a shade of purple I'd never seen before. "Elena, surely you're joking. I just interviewed him. He's wholly unqualified. He doesn't have the academic background. He doesn't. He has more integrity in his wet sock than you have in your entire department." She cut him off. "He enters the training block today. And Marcus? If I find out that his schedule is accidentally lost, or his resources are missing, or he is treated with anything less than the respect due a future executive, you will be the one scrubbing the toilets. Do I make myself clear?" "Crystal," Marcus whispered, But the victory was short-lived because Elena meant what she said about it not being a handout. The training program was brutal. It was me and 5 other candidates. They were all 20-something shark-shiny suits, MBA degrees from Wharton and Yale, perfect teeth, and eyes that looked at me like I was a cockroach that had wandered into a Michelin star restaurant. The ringleader was a guy named Julian. Julian was everything I wasn't: rich, connected, and cruel. So, Julian whispered to me on the second day, while we were preparing a mock presentation. "I heard you're the charity case. The Cinderella man. Did you bring your mop, or are you hoping to clean up using just your charm?" "I'm just here to work, Julian," I said, keeping my eyes on my screen. "Cute," he sneered. "Don't get comfortable, old man. You're out of your league." And for the first week, it felt like I was. They threw us into simulations, complex logistical nightmares involving angry clients, supply chain failures, and PR disasters. The other candidates quoted textbooks. They used buzzwords like synergy and paradigm shift. I didn't know the buzzwords, but I knew people. When the simulation threw a scenario at us about a hotel guest threatening to sue because of a lost reservation, Julian wrote a 3-page legal brief. I simply role-played listening to the guest, validating their anger and offering a specific, immediate solution that cost the company $0. "Done," Dave radioed back. I looked at Sterling. "Stain is gone. Script is on the floor monitor, which actually makes you look more natural because you're not staring over the audience's heads. You're good to go, sir." Sterling looked at his lapel. He looked at the monitor. He looked at me. "What's your name, son?" "Lucas Miller." "Well, Lucas Miller." Sterling straightened his tie. "You're the only person in this building with a brain." He walked out and gave the speech of his life. He announced the investment was secure. The next morning, we were all called into the boardroom. Marcus Thorne looked smug. He was holding a file that I assumed contained Julian's hiring paperwork. Elena Vance sat at the head of the table. "This was an interesting experiment," Elena said. "Julian, your technical scores were perfect." Julian smirked, shooting a glance at me. "But," Elena continued, "when the house caught fire, you looked for the manual. Lucas looked for the water bucket." She stood up. "Marcus, process the paperwork." Marcus smiled and slid the folder toward Julian. "No, Marcus," Elena said, her voice sharp. "For Lucas." The room went silent. Marcus dropped his pen. "Elena, you can't be serious." The board. Mr. Sterling's voice boomed from the speakerphone in the center of the table. "Thinks Lucas is the best hire you've made in 10 years. If you don't hire him, I'm taking him to my company." Elena smiled at me. "Congratulations, Lucas. You're our new senior liaison." I walked out of that building that day, but I didn't walk to the bus stop. I walked to the tailor down the street. I bought a suit, a navy blue one that fit me perfectly. I paid with the signing bonus that hit my account an hour later. I picked Toby up from school wearing that suit. He looked at me, his eyes wide. "Dad? You look like a superhero." I picked him up, hugging him tight, listening to the clear, strong sound of his breathing. "No, buddy," I said, tears pricking my eyes. "I'm just a guy who got a chance. It's been 6 months since that day. I'm not invisible anymore. When I walk through the lobby, people say hello. But every Tuesday night, when the office is quiet, I go down to the break room. I find the night janitor, a young guy named Kevin who's working his way through community college. I bring him a coffee, 2 sugars, just how he likes it. And I tell him to keep his head up, because dignity isn't in the title. It isn't in the paycheck. Dignity is in the fight. It's in doing whatever it takes to protect the people you love, even if it means getting on your knees to scrub a floor. And sometimes, if you fight hard enough, the world actually notices that. So, let me ask you this. When was the last time you looked at the person cleaning up your mess? Did you see them? I mean, really see them? Because you never know. The person holding the mop might just be the one who saves the day. Tell me your stories in the comments below. Have you ever been judged for a job you had to do to survive? I want to hear it. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And remember, never let anyone tell you you don't fit the image. You make your own image.